Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Chivalry 2 developer stream. We're super excited to have you guys with us today. As you can see on your screen right now, we've got a number of special guests joining us today. I'm going to do a quick introduction of everybody here. We're going to get into the nitty gritty a little later. But today, as usual, I have associate producer Moon with me. I have.
Hello.
Hey, Moon! I also have John, who is a level designer, and Pat, who is an environment artist here at Torn Banner Studios.
Thanks for joining us, guys. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get into it. Um, I just want to say at the beginning of today's stream that, of course, Chivalry 2 is launching on Steam, and the Tenosian Invasion update will be coming out this Sunday, which is June the 12th. Everybody here is super stoked about that. I can't believe it's going to be so soon. And I also want to take a moment today, in case you guys don't know, today is Chivalry 2's 1-year anniversary since we launched on Epic Games, Xbox, PlayStation. It's our year-old birthday. We're 1 year old, guys.
And we are definitely committed to that idea of launching on Epic and then having 1 year later come to Steam. So we're pretty much on that timeline exactly, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's we're off by 4 days, but I mean, can you get any closer? It's been a year exclusive, and we're finally ready to come to Steam.
I feel like we're so close, but yet so far. I'm just can't wait for the weekend, honestly.
Yeah, we're launching on a Sunday, so that's going to be a super fun weekend.
Yeah, this is new territory.
Well,
It's
it'll
kind of
be a
nice
good
because then you
time.
can
Yeah.
you get the game going, but then you're basically free to just kind of join in and play, right?
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully everybody has their Sundays marked free on their calendar and they can join in with us. So we're going to jump right in. As you can see by the stream title today, we are talking about some of the new maps that are going to be coming to Chivalry 2 on Sunday. We're talking about 2 new team objective maps, and we're also going to touch on our new TDM. But first, we're gonna do some real introductions. We're gonna start with John. As I mentioned, John is a level designer here at Torn Banner Studios and for Chivalry 2. What's your background in the industry, John?
My background isn't too extensive. I've only ever worked at Torn Banner, but I've been here for a little over 6 years. I started at Torn Banner as QA, and I've worked my way up to level design.
That's one of the things I really like about us as a studio is even if you start off in one position, you can kind of migrate into other positions. I know we had a character artist, Ivan, on a few weeks ago who mentioned he started in one position and migrated into another one that he felt fit him a little better. But how about you tell us a little bit about what exactly a level designer even is, in case people in chat don't know what that is?
So, as a level designer, it's my responsibility to ensure that the player navigation as well as horse navigation now for these Tenosian maps is fun. It makes sense and it fits the context of the map, as well as setting up the spawning logic, the objective logic, and again making sure the objectives are also again fun and make sense.
Makes sense to me. We have Dead Zone 404 in the chat who wants everyone to know that levels and environments look awesome. He says, "The burning library billowing smoke gave me chills in the test." Thanks for saying that. um, in particular to your job, what about level design do you like doing the most?
My favorite part of level design is really creating those cinematic experiences and giving the players the feeling of that they're in the battle and making sure that the objectives help them feel that they're in the battle. Really, just giving that cinematic experience is my favorite part about working in level design here.
Was there a particular objective, and this could be with the new maps or anything in the past that you've worked on that really felt that way to you, and that you're just really proud of the progress that to the end result there?
Yeah, I think in the new maps, I think we do it the best, and bringing that cinematicness to it. Uh, might talk about that later, but kind of the bringing bombards into giving the Tenosian bombards and having them and working with them to make them feel balanced, to make them feel sense, but also that visceralness of the booming, of the shaking, of the progress pushing them forward. I think that's my favorite thing. I think that's something we've done really well in these new maps.
Agreed. I think it's especially when with what you're just describing, it was this team effort with level design driving the main idea of it, and the whole team coming together with the sound effects, the environment that is taking place in, just the overall design. I think was just absolutely fantastic. And I remember sitting in that meeting as well. I think back when we were having early level design discussions for what we wanted to do with this objective or with this level, and it changed around quite a bit until we finally landed on that like the bombard experience, and that was really the outlining factor of like what this level should be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I actually have a few slides that we're going to be going over later that talk about the way that um, the maps kind of changed over time. Um, but I think that's something that we could touch on a little bit now too is the iterative process of level design. I know that Moon is heavily involved in as well. Um, you guys regularly have meetings after. So on a regular basis, weekly basis, we have playtests, internal playtests with the developers, as well as a community group of testers. And pretty much after every playtest, or on a regular basis, you guys are sitting in these few hour-long meetings I've seen of just going over all of the details, all of the nitty gritty. What can we change? What should be improved? Um, and it seems like it's a very involved process.
Oh, definitely. Every time you do a play test, or every time we play with the community or something, there's always new stuff to talk about. There's always new things that come up, and things that we go, oh, we can improve on this, we can make this better, or some. And even there's some things that we go, oh, maybe we should cut down that or bring that back, or. But that iterative process is so important to bringing the best out of the maps, for sure.
Definitely.
How long does a map usually take from, I guess, from the initial playtest to release, and how many playtests kind of like iterated on over time?
Oh, that's a tough quite months. I don't know. I couldn't give you an exact time, but definitely months yeah, months for sure. Because there's
I
a
enjoy
lot of
putting you on the
stuff
spot
that
there. Sorry, Tom.
needs to happen.
And what's interesting about level design or making maps in general is you guys kind of work um, on a bunch of different things all at the same time. So I know uh, while these were in development, there was also other stuff under development, and maps kind of transfer from who's working on them. It's very much a collaborative process, is what I'm trying to get at. I also want to bring in Pat, who I mentioned is a environment artist. Pat, what's your background in art and in the games industry?
Hi there. Yeah, so my background in art, I guess, started when I was quite young. I've been into art and like drawing since before I can remember, and I just got more and more into art the older I got. Um, and so as a teenager, I was like drawing every day. Um, I was into games, video games, but also tabletop games. So I was painting miniatures and I was making scenery and terrain for these games and from scratch and modeling it, physically modeling and painting. And I actually enjoyed making that scenery more than playing the games. So I think that kind of should have been like an early kind of sign as to my calling to make environments in the games industry. I went to university for fine arts, so I have an interdisciplinary background. But then after graduating, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do until I discovered 3D. Um, so I spent a few years teaching myself 3D, and I got my first job like almost 15 years ago as a 3D artist, not in the games industry. I was working in architectural visualization. So I was making 3D models of buildings and houses, modeling them, texturing them for architects and developers, which was cool. I've really enjoyed it. I did that for about 3 years, but it wasn't as creative as I kind of wanted it to be. Um, so I thought, hey, these are the same skills that they use to make video games. So I kind of quickly transitioned and put together a game portfolio. I started using Unreal Engine, which had just become free at the time. And then I got my first job in video games about 10 years ago, and I've been working in games ever since.
What kind of work do you do on Chivalry 2 specifically, or in games? Like, what kind of I guess environment are you arting on?
Yeah, so I'm an environment artist. I have been the entire time I've worked in games. And environment artists make the environment art in a game, which kind of tells you nothing about the job other than just repeating the title. Um, so I can go into a bit more detail about that. Uh, so basically, the environment art team, we make everything that you see in a Chivalry level or map that's not a character, that is not their armor, and that is not a weapon, or is not a horse. Um, so anything that's not alive, although we do make plants and trees which are alive. So we make that stuff too. So all the castles, all the towers, all the walls, all the battlements, the gates, the drawbridges. If there's a village, a town, or a city, we make the houses. We make the individual walls, the doors, windows, roofs, stairs, fences. Um, we make all the props, so barrels, crates, wagons. We make vegetation, plants and trees. Uh, all the natural stuff um, like rocks, the ground. We kind of determine like higher level stuff too, like what does the sky look like? What's the time of day? What is the lighting? Um, what's the weather like? Is it raining? Did it rain earlier that day? And is the ground now covered in mud? And are there footprints from soldiers that have passed by? We also do visual effects. So if you see like dust in the wind, we we do that. How windy is it? How fast is the grass blowing? So there's like a ton of stuff that we do and we consider when we're making environment art. Um, Technically, what that comes down to is a lot of 3D modeling, uh, and then a lot of texturing, either creating our own textures or assigning textures that are scanned from real world data. Uh, and then, of course, we work very closely with level designers like John to take what they've done and make it look good with the assets that we have, but that also support gameplay and kind of give players clues as to like what's my next objective, what are the paths I can take. So working like on a daily basis with them as well to bring the levels to life.
More so than any other update that we've done so far. In the past, we've had a lot of new assets that have come in, but nothing to the scale of what we've done before. What was that like putting together an entirely new faction aesthetic?
It was pretty nuts, to be honest, but in a really good way. Um, and I can go into more details with the specific map, but just creating a third faction and having them be so different from the previous factions, and really wanting to showcase this uniqueness. Um, so creating a new faction, but also creating their entire architectural style and creating what I believe is the biggest city we've created to date in a chivalry map with very diverse objectives. Um, it was a fun challenge. It was a ton of work, but I think it was worth it in the end. I'm super happy of the work that the environment team has done.
I think so as well. I mean, the amount of compliments that I've seen around the time of the initial reveal, and then just the next wave of compliments that we saw when people were actually in game and getting to experience it themselves. I think the whole team has a lot to be proud of.
And as a level designer, I think the environment artists really inject life into the levels. There's a lot of times where, as a level designer, I'll be making a level and blocking things out, but then once the environment artists get their hands on it, then you go in there and you're amazed because they really add so much life to it.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
You said it.
I got a similar question that we asked John, which was, um, in particular with these new maps, what did you like to work on the most, and maybe what is one thing that you're most proud of that came out of these maps?
Um, so I guess what I like to work on the most, I mean I like to do a bit of everything, and we all the environment artists are quite versatile, so we do get to do a bit of everything. But I think my favorite moment in any map is when we've been working on it for about like a month, and we have a bunch of the pieces already, and we start to put it together. So that actually happens quite quickly. You kind of take your box of parts and you put your first houses and buildings together, and then start to add props. And we basically set up like one particular area that comes together quite quickly that establishes the visual benchmark for what that part of the level will look like. Um, and once we get that approved, we can apply that same visual treatment to the entire level, the entire section of that level, and all artists will have it as sort of a guide as to the the materials and textures you should be using, and the kind of composition, the level of detail, the props, the type of props we'll be using. Um, and on the map that I worked on, we had kind of five distinct areas like this, each one with its own unique architectural style. Uh, and just defining those five snapshots of what those areas are going to look like. Once we kind of had all those done, I knew the map was going to be in an okay spot. But leading up to that, when you don't quite know exactly what a certain part of the level is going to look like, can be a bit daunting. But once you actually kind of nail that, and everyone on the entire team can see the direction you're going for, it's incredibly satisfying. So that's definitely my favorite part.
I see a question in chat here, and well, it's more of a comment that I can actually respond with an answer to. And that's don't forget about the low spec PCs. And I think it's worth bringing up as well that um, I think we've been more prepared to do optimizations based on what we've learned in the past than any other set. So we've been testing these maps on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One and everything. So we have done a lot of optimizations to make these maps very playable for all sorts of types of hardware. So
Definitely. I'm going to swap us over to another screen right now. Bum, ba-da-dum, so we can have some images on screen. So I'm going to put Breach of Baldwin, we're going to talk about first, which is one of our new team objective maps. If you haven't played it yet, these will all be new sites for you. uh, so we're going to start off. I kind of went through some of the level design and art stuff that I could find to share with everybody in the chat today. So on screen right now, I'm showing off basically some of the visual inspirations for Bulwark, or Breach of Baldwin, as it is publicly known. Usually internally, we have a name that we call the maps up until the point that we pick an official forward-facing map. So any references you see to the name Bulwark, that is Breach of Baldwin. So on screen right now, we're seeing kind of like all of the reference photos, stock images, basically any visual that you can think of that our team wanted to include in the map. We've got references for doors, doorways, walls, roads, paths, windows, arches, and tunnels. Um, this is a question for Pat. Um, is there any particular things that you and the rest of the team are researching in order to come up with this? I guess I'll call it a visual palette of what you think that you want to portray within the map, specifically pertaining to Breach of Baldwin.
Yeah, so I personally did not put this one together, but we all sort of use this technique before we start on a map. And generally it involves kind of getting some larger scale uh, ideas of what the overall architecture in this case will look like. So like in the bottom left of the image, you can see like kind of entire houses or buildings. but then based on that, we try to break down the key elements, such as like doorways, arches, windows, detailing of the ground, because we're filling out an entire city, and often we'll only have one or two real core references. Obviously, we don't just want to repeat those across the city, so we'll isolate these elements that can be repeated, and then sort of apply those design principles and that color palette to the other buildings, so they all feel like they were built around the same time using the same construction methods, but uh, they do end up being different but all similar enough in that they share these design elements. So it's kind of that targeting that like overall image for what we're going for, and then breaking down what defines that, and being able to apply that across a whole set of assets.
For sure. I actually have, I'm going to swap the other picture just to kind of show some of the other building shapes and walls and wall details that was collected as well, just so people in chat have a chance to see basically kind of where we start when we're starting to plan a map, visually, and also we're going to be swapping over to a little bit of uh, map layout here. Um, this is basically a super basic breakdown of Breach of Baldwin into its different stages in a very early development stage. Obviously, this is what we call a blockout. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, John, if I'm using the wrong words at any time here. But basically, you can see that the different stages are laid out on your screen here, with stage 1 being, starting out in the desert, and stage 4 being the bulwark at the end there. So this is kind of a question for either of you guys, or maybe just an open discussion about the narrative behind the map. I have it written on screen a little bit here, but what is the story we're trying to tell with this map?
So the story here is really Tenosian's first appearance in Chivalry 2. It's them kicking down the door to an invasion force. It's really the invasion force coming out through the Dune Sea, the forest, and you can see in stage 1, or sorry, not the forest, the desert, completely opposite of forest, the desert in stage 1, and kind of traversing that and making like a surprise attack on the defending Mason forces that own the bulwark, which is like the big wall and the city in front of it. And it's Tenosian's first push. It's their first smash. It's their punch. They're trying to punch their way through. Um, and they've brought their large siege weapons, their bombards, their gunpowder weapons to help them really kind of kick down that door.
And that's definitely one of the many unique things about this map is the fact that it does involve these new uh, gunpowder siege weapons to blow up that big wall. Um, what is even the process for I guess thinking about how that big wall is going to be falling down, and gameplay wise as well?
It's tricky because when you think of new objectives like this, you have to take a lot of things into account. The bombers are obviously new, so we have to balance the strength of the bombards. Obviously, we have to think about how they would be used, if they would even be used in previous stages, um, and really how they fit into the narrative, as well as how they fit into Tenosia and into the Tenosian theme, where the Tenosians are much more uh, scientifically based. I believe would be correct to say,
Yep,
where
that's correct.
they've brought this technology of bombards and brought it to the Masons, who previous to this would have rarely seen anything of these. So um, making sure that they felt intimidating for the Masons who have never seen it, and also for the players who this is the first time we're bringing something like this into the game. Um, but tying it in and balancing it is the toughest part of it, and trying to making it work with the ball work, the build, the big wall on stage four. Um, it's tricky. It's tricky, but after iterations and playing around with things, I believe we did a pretty good job at it.
Yeah, we actually had less bombards originally when we were working on the map.
Yeah, exactly. And then after some play tests, people were like, "More bombards, more bombards." So
This
we
is
just
so
added more
cool.
bombards.
Yeah, like it was a case of like, yeah, we can balance that. Also, it's cooler, so let's do it.
Oh yeah, it being cooler is always something that we like. Let's add this. Oh, but if we add more, it's cooler. Oh, cooler, you say.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I also think that having the bombards and having this map specifically is such an important step for setting the stage with this Notion conflict because, as you were saying, John, like you have this one thing and it's what do they do best is like their technology, and so I think with the initial cutscene that we have too, it's them coming over the horizon, and all of a sudden you have this new force. You don't know what their capabilities are, and so you're sitting there and you're like, anything can happen. And I think that's such a cool moment to experience.
Hmm. And that feeling of the Tenosians know this is their land. They've lived here, so they can traverse the desert, and it being a surprise to the defenders, the Mason defenders, that oh, we didn't think we would be attacked here, but they've made it through the desert, and now they're here, and oh no.
Exactly.
That's one of the things I really like about our maps and the story we're trying to tell overall is that um, each of these maps of ours are basically a battle that has taken place within the world of chivalry. So it really adds a lot of intention um, and a lot of stakes as well about, this is really about Tenosia wanting to take back their land. On screen, I'm going to swap our screen. Feel free to change the direction of this conversation at all, John. But I picked a couple from the meetings that I saw about how over the map's development that the map had kind of changed based on playtests or based on just your feedback meetings. And I saw that one of them was basically what how stage one had changed over time and had basically been converted into a convoy stage. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, you know, where the map started and what kind of feedback you guys got and what made you change the objective in the end.
So the objective here initially in stage one was not a convoy stage. It was more in the desert. Uh, but we wanted to bring in the convoys to give the feeling of a unified force, kind of an invasion force. We didn't feel that what we had before didn't didn't bring that out enough. So we added it's two convoys that you have to push, and so then we believe that that kind of brings the force more together and makes it feel like more of an invasion force pushing their way to the wall. Um, and kind of you see that progress of that push there. Since you're pushing something, there's always you can see the progress as you're playing of the thing moving forward, and as your force is moving forward, um, which we really didn't have in the first iterations of this objective and in this stage. So that
I
was
think
really
there's
good. I
a
think the convoy stage works well here, especially the double convoy.
there's a great image here that really helps highlight that feeling of the invasion. Do you want to clarify what that middle image is, John?
Yeah, so the middle image there is actually all the paths of the convoy. So at certain points, once the convoy reaches a certain point, they split into even more pushables, which for the not specifically for stage one, I think for it's kind of stage 1.5, where there instead of you're pushing two convoys, it turns into four siege ramps, which in my opinion is when that image of just the four siege ramps being pushed to the wall, I believe for me at least, is so cinematic and kind of reinforces the idea of a siege so much that um, we had to do it. It was too cool to not do. Yeah, and in that middle image, you could see all the paths I think this might be a bit old, but you could see all the paths that the pushables took to get to their final destinations and the paths that the players would have to go pushing those convoys.
Yeah, in terms of siege ramps alone, I think I think we doubled everything we've had in the previous map, so that's pretty crazy.
Gotta double it, make it cooler. Kraken Wise in the chat says, I liked it. It felt like a giant battle going on. And we got another comment. The ballistas are really given time to shine in the first objective. So a lot of
Oh yeah,
praise.
the ballistas and the catapults are such an awesome feature, John, of the second
Oh
stage.
yeah, definitely. It just the atmospheric of even if you're not hitting anything with, especially with the catapults, the atmospheric of the catapults projectiles coming and hitting even near you is so cool and gets you really into the mood. And yeah, exactly like Kraken said, that it it just makes it so much cooler, makes it feel like a battle, as well as it gives the defenders hope. It makes it seem like they're not just pushovers, that they do actually have some kind of defense set up, um, and that you're not just going to steamroll them.
Yeah, the closest equivalent to what we had before, I think, was Red Helm, and so you would have more cinematically, you would have had the trebuchets in the background of the Agathian camp just launching onto the battlefield. But for the most part, they're primarily cinematic. This is kind of the same thing, but you can get damage for realsies like from the flying stuff, so it's pretty intense.
Yeah, it puts you in the battle much more than having it kind of not really matter. If they're just flying over you, and you can see them and they're cool, but when they actually hurt you, or when you fire a catapult and you see it hit the ground and kill three guys and one teammate, you always hit one teammate by accident. It just makes it so much cooler. It's more immersive that way.
Agreed.
One of the other objectives I was kind of looking into with your old meeting slides was um, in a later stage, you guys actually had kind of these 3 buildings that served as objectives or capture objectives. But in the final version, that is reduced down to 1, I believe. Was there feedback based on playtests or feedback based on your department discussions that you had that influenced that change?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely after playtests, I believe, were probably the biggest factor to reducing the objectives here. So originally it was 3 objectives during one stage, and that got reduced to one objective split into, oh sorry, 2 buildings split into a stage for each of them, and that really helped us really just pace the level out better. When it was 3 objectives all at once, it was hard to have them all be meaningful at the same time. Um, and so reducing the number of objectives helped us really focus the area much more and uh, kind of theme the area as well. When it was 3 buildings, they would all have to be different, and it really didn't make that much sense after playing. So yeah, um, definitely playtests were definitely the most influential thing here, and it's definitely something we noticed after playtesting.
I think there's also some
Absolutely.
narrative discussion as well, where it's like, well, we have these 3 things, and what's kind of the driving force for why we're taking them,
Yeah,
aside from just
what
moving
are they
speed.
for? Is really one of the questions we ask ourselves a lot of time. Is why is this here, and why would they want to capture it? And so reducing the number of objectives there and kind of focusing them better really helped us kind of cement the context of why they're there and what they're doing there.
Yeah, it really improved it overall, and it all made sense once we locked in what they were for and everything, right?
Yeah. I have some screenshots ahead of basically at least 1 or 2 of every objective. So on screen right now, I'm showing the first objective. And I have a question for Pat in particular, and John, feel free to chime in. But I imagine there is a lot of difficulty in creating a both functional and nice to look at area when the area is completely wide open. You don't have a lot of opportunities to add cool buildings or a lot of stuff just kind of thrown around to create visual interest. You really have to be picky and specific about what is being added to, to this first objective, because it's supposed to be a wide open field. There's a lot of, convoys and siege weapons being pushed around. I guess my question there is, uh, what were maybe some of the design choices that were made, or what kind of planning went into the design of this first stage for art?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So often when we get these maps in the blockout stage, those structures that you see in the screenshot will be cubes, or maybe like slightly more uh, detailed, like meshes put together with several cubes, but they're basically just kind of blocking out the space, and we sort of need to, like you said, find something that's going to look good, but also respect the initial design. So, kind of looking at what we have here, you can see they are still still cubes, but we have added in silhouetting along the top where it's not going to impact player navigation. It's not going to trip them up at all. And I think like the big thing, particularly for this section of the level, but also for big open areas, um, is looking at the screenshot. It doesn't look empty, even though the only spaces that are blocked are by the ruins and the mantlets, and maybe a tiny bit by the base of the trees. What the particular artist that work on this section has done is kind of added like a gradient of um, natural fall off. So you have plants, you have grass, you have tiny rocks, you have this old road going down the middle, and there are layers and layers of granularity, like even down to the tiniest pebbles the size of your fist, that work quite aesthetically. So looking at it, it doesn't look empty at all. Uh, Although if you were to reduce this to the collision meshes, you would basically just be seeing the cubes. So it's a bit of a challenge for artists to kind of take a very abstract gray box and make it look interesting. But in this case, using a lot of foliage and also painting different texture blending on the ground itself, I feel like uh, the artists were able to make something super interesting, that at the kind of base level design level is fairly simple.
And something I said earlier in the stream where the artists really bring these levels to life is that when doing these kind of stages in Blockout in LD, it does look very plain and open, and you're kind of worried, especially very early on as an LD. Oh, is this too open? Is this going to be too plain? But as you can see in this image, once artists get their hands on it and start working magic, it really brings the whole area to life.
It was also very intentional too, because especially for this stage, we had horses featured.
Yes, definitely. A lot of the placement of those blocks and uh, obviously had went through a lot of iteration after a lot of playtests to make sure that both player collision and horse collision, especially, was smooth here, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that players didn't feel trapped in areas or players felt like the horses could navigate around smoothly. So all those are taken into account when blocking things out and when thinking about layout. Um, but again, once art gets their hands on it, everything is so beautiful.
Yeah, sorry, just one
Mm-hmm.
more thing I would also add is that I feel like the background can also add a lot. So the cliffs and the mountains that you see off to the sides, they're not accessible as a gameplay space, but they're always there, and they frame the environment with a backdrop. Uh, that wall uh, is a character in itself, uh, and it is an objective. But during the first phase, it's a background element, but you're constantly pushing towards it. And there was so much attention and detail put into that wall so that it reads well from a distance. But then also when you get up close at the kind of even microscopic level. It just looks amazing. So having a really like cool looking, believable background, but then also knowing that you're going to progress to that and it's going to become your next objective, can also really help to um, take away from the fact that you're fighting in a huge open area. Like you know you're moving towards something um, that's different, and but also really kind of helps to sell the scene.
Absolutely. And earlier you mentioned foliage, so I actually have a picture of some of the foliage that was used, as well as the different siege weapons and pushables here. Um, as you mentioned before, basically all of the assets were created uniquely to be Tenosian in appearance. So you can really see kind of like the green and gold details of the Tenosia faction, um, just the overall look about how these are constructed to look very Tenosian, which I think is very cool and very unique. Up on the wall here, one of the other things I really like about this map is the long sight lines. So even from this view, up on the wall here, we can see the market, and further out at the very top right, we can see that giant bulwark. Um, uh, I believe that these sight lines are pretty intentional. Can either of you speak to kind of like maybe what types of discussions went on to make sure that the map kind of feels contained with those walls on the side, but also that the sight lanes remained open? I imagine is intentional.
Yeah, definitely. We always try to kind of give a hint, at least a hint to where you're going, and I think probably the biggest one is the big bulwark at the back. It's always kind of in the distance and in the view, and it's something that we always wanted to make sure was visible. Um, so yeah, making sure that they're in the sight line is very important to us to give the players a sense of where we have to go and the journey through as you get closer.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of level design is making sure that people don't get lost. So having
Oh
these
yeah,
kind of
definitely.
these monuments that are a
Something
way
you
to
can
center
orient.
yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Something you can see and you can go, okay, that's in that direction. Now I know. Okay, where's my left and right? Where am I supposed to go now?
hmm There was a comment in chat about how the shadows seemed off in this map, and I just want to give credit to the artist that I don't think that was their fault. I think there was a issue with the lighting in the public test build. So when you see it on Sunday, it'll probably look closer to this with the shadows looking all nice and pretty.
Yeah, there was a last minute change that broke the lighting that we didn't anticipate, and so the public belt, like, it was fine, but it wasn't lit the way we wanted it to. So check it out. See.
hmm so I'm gonna jump to the market here. Um, as you mentioned, John, this was kind of like the way that you guys sorted out the capture objective. So here we have the capturing of the market and then the capturing of the building afterward. Um, and I actually really wanted to chat about the decisions in making all of these buildings accessible, so you can actually like climb up on top of them, run around, do some parkour stuff. Um, at what stage was that implemented in? Whose idea was it? Was it always going to be a thing? I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, so I've always really liked bringing some verticality to the levels as much as we can. And this is something that we wanted to do early on, but in planning stuff, it I believe it got lost a little bit, but we made sure we brought it back. Yeah, so bringing the verticality to the stage was really important, especially to me, and something that I worked hard trying to bring back because of all the changes this area went through. You could from the pictures from before, obviously when it looked much different, and kind of condensed into one area. It went through a lot of changes. But yeah, bring back the verticality and the options for players. I really like bringing options to players. So they can go on the ground. There's a lot of areas that you could use to jump up here, and there's a lot of things up here um, that you could use as weapons. as carryables and stuff like that. And that's something I really like to do, and just not only this map, but in any map I work on. And I think this is probably one of my favorite areas for sure, and just how the verticality here works with the objective of capture the bazaar, capture the market, and there's so many different ways that you can get into the market. Uh, Instead of just a clear front door, you could take the ladder, go up the top, jump on top of these boxes, get on top of these roofs, run across these cloth awnings, jump down, jump on someone's head, throw something on someone's head as they're trying to capture below. And so,
In a way, it kind of reminds me of the Gallancourt stage with the boats in a different kind of light.
yeah, definitely the Gallancourt, the dock stage, which is another stage I worked very hard on to kind of bring that verticality with the ships, and trying to do kind of the similar things here, where there's a lot of moments where you can jump down on somebody, which is always cool when you jump down on somebody and you chop off their head or something like that. I'm trying to bring that here, as well as bringing just some more interesting aspects. Instead of it just being one level, there's two levels, and there's things on that other level that you could use. You can see in the image here, there's chairs, there's a sundial there, there's stuff. Everything we try to make everything that looks like you could pick it up. You could pick it up. So trying to bring that stuff up to here was really fun. It was just a fun area just to play around and figure out.
I imagine, and just from looking at these screenshots, there's a lot of color and there's a lot of kind of these unique assets that John mentioned. How was kind of making the art for the market, Pat? I imagine it was a lot of involvement just due to the sheer amount of detail in this area.
Yeah, so I didn't work directly on this map, but all of us work quite closely together as a team, and so I kind of can see all the developments as they're happening. Um, it definitely kind of progresses iteratively, because on the map that I was working on, we also had a market. So kind of later in the game, closer to the deadline, we started getting market assets in. So the artist I was working with made a bunch of um, spice bags, and uh, so then those got pulled into this map, and a bunch of the props that we were using in our market got pulled into this map. So that's kind of a way that even if we're working on two completely different maps, but in a similar vein, we can leverage off each other. I grabbed a bunch of textures from this map, so it is a big task doing like such an involved area like this. But because there's so many of us working on overlapping things,
Mm-hmm.
we can kind of feed off each other, and it really helps to lighten the load. You're never working on anything in isolation without support.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this map in particular, I have a couple screenshots that are just more like behind the scenes area, is that even in these behind the scenes areas, you can see clotheslines with clothes hanging down. You've got little ropes on the ground, pieces of broken pottery, foliage. Everywhere that a player can go is really decked out and made to look like a front stage area. Nothing looks like a backstage area, which I think is really special.
Just a quick note, Jen. I'm not sure how many slides are left for Baldwin. In terms of like if we can go over or not, just want to let you know in case we're locked into a time.
Yeah, we can kind of speed up through this last part here. I did want to show some of the detail in the end of the map here, in particular on these rock walls. I noticed there's kind of like a lot of details of all of these wooden structures. Again, kind of the same from the first objective where we've got these smaller structures that kind of shape the environment that are quite interesting. And obviously, we talked a little bit at the beginning about this being a very unique objective with the wall tumbling down, all that kind of fun stuff. With oh, I do have this slide as well, which was just some of the concept art for the wall here, just in case anybody in chat is interested in the concept art stage.
That's really cool.
Well, our second map internally known as Library, or the Raising of Askendir. We've got some of the art references. I believe, Pat, you worked more directly with this. So I'm seeing a lot of blues, which is really pretty because we're out by the ocean. Is there any particular inspirations that you or anybody else on the art team used or gathered specifically for this map? Or where did you find
So
inspiration?
yeah, so we gathered a ton of references, and this is just an example of like kind of highlighting the key references that we would use and apply to all the buildings. But I guess if you're thinking historically, like even going back as far as like Byzantine architecture, and then moving forward through Ottoman and Turkish architecture, and even using some modern references and kind of isolating some key points like use of like pointed arches, and also the materials that they use in their construction. And then this current image is like a breakdown of just one of the kind of five distinct architectural areas that we had, just to really kind of get that like uniqueness and definition in those spaces, but also always referencing our kind of key elements so that they, even if you're in a different area, you can tell that they're using the same like design principles and same construction methods, but just like a little bit different to give that area its own flavor. So that
Yeah.
particular board is for like the city area, stage
Mm-hmm.
3.
In terms of stages, on screen right now, I'm showing the different stages of the map here. I just realized it says there's no stage 3 written on the left, but it is in the image. uh, the maybe either of you, if you want to talk about the lore on this map, what is the story behind this map?
So this is really the retaliation football work. So it's Mason's first incursion into Tenosian territory. It's their first attack, and it's them kind of ruining the beauty and not intellect, but the science and kind of the scientific nature of the Tenosians. They're ruining it. They're as the Masons do. They're smashing it all. They're
Yeah, they're
burning it. They're
mad.
breaking it. They're mad, exactly. And that journey from outside the city and their dive into the city and their push into the city from the outside, where you start off on the ships coming in into the lighthouse, and you move over the bridge into the city, and then deeper, even more into the city, into their library, where you burn their wealth of knowledge, kind of their great library, which sadly happened in real life in
No.
Alexandria in real life, which is a shame, but kind of bringing that here.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly in real life, but not so sadly in game.
Yeah, luckily the map resets and we get to do it all over again.
The
In
knowledge is
particular,
not lost forever.
yeah. In particular, to stage 1, I noticed there was a few different iterations on how um, the attackers get to the lighthouse. So on screen, I kind of have a few different versions of what this objective looked like throughout its uh, lifetime. Originally, it looks like we have some ramps leading up from the boats, and as you know or see in the final image, the boats are just kind of docked, and we have that being the spawn point. Um, is there anything interesting to share about the direction or development of this objective and how it changed over time?
Yeah, a lot of this changed over time to really help and reinforce the start of the map and the initial spawns and the cinematic intro, where if the boats just came up and straight up into the library, as the bottom picture down there shows, it wouldn't feel as cool. The start wouldn't feel as cool. So giving that space in front of the library, which still made sense as a beach area, gave us more room to get that initial clash, that initial battle in front of the lighthouse, to kind of reinforce that and make that stronger than if it was just the ships. Because of the height difference between the top of the
Mm-hmm.
wall and the water is so great that with so little space, trying to get that initial clash there was tough. So enlarging that space, bringing some spawns, as you can see in the other bottom picture, you can see the spawners there. Bringing some spawners down there really helped us kind of get that initial clash we wanted, that initial start of the battle, which is just so important in all of our maps to start it off well.
Mm-hmm.
It really
And
complemented the art that went in as well.
yeah, for sure. I have a couple more detailed slides about it, but they show off kind of um, the beach here and the stairs kind of crawling up the sides of the lighthouse here, all of the little ladders, uh, lots of different access points. Oh, and the elevator, of course. Can't forget the elevator.
Oh, I love the
I've seen some
elevators.
clips of people goofing around on those elevators.
It's the best part. This is my favorite objective because of the elevator. I always take the elevator and never take the stairs.
Me too. I love the elevators. I'm really glad we got those in, and thank you, Aurelia, one of our LDs.
The inside of the lighthouse is what we're seeing now. Really pretty lighting in here. I also really like the Tenosian banners. They're also really nice. This objective is really fun. It's got a lot of access points, so you never really feel quite safe if you're inside there.
There's a
Anybody
great
can come from any
discussion.
side.
Mm-hmm.
There was a great discussion when this was being made about like, okay, how much can we destroy without like breaking the breaking the game? And so I think we found a good balance.
Yeah, with the whole tower coming down, we are thinking of our console players, and we have to remember that a whole building coming down does offer some performance hits. But I think there was a good medium that we struck.
Definitely, and definitely thinking about, as you can see in this picture, what area of the building you have to blow up. What
Mm-hmm.
makes sense that would take the whole building down. Um, I think in some of our earlier things there was some confusion about how would blowing this thing up make the whole building fall down. And I think we came to a good thing here where it's that middle pillar which feels like it's holding up the rest of it. And once that's gone, the structure just collapses.
Tubbyman6 says, or just wants to give a shout out to whoever worked on the cinematics. He said they are pure hype, and I have to agree. On screen
Yes,
right
they're
now as
fantastic.
well, we're seeing the bridge that is from the lighthouse over to the main area. Uh, a lot of different verticality here as well. It kind of reminds me of the Falmire Bridge, where you can kind of go underneath and mess around with people. There's also
Yeah,
some really great sightlines here too.
this is our first three-tiered bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So we've
Yes,
had the
3
Lion Spire
tiers.
Bridge, we have one level, we have Fallmeyer, which had two, and now we have three, which is just insane. I love it.
And
Gameplay. Yeah, go ahead, John.
all these bridges stem from our Lion Spire Bridge, which was really our first attempt and view at as that more constricted area, where it really feels like a mosh pit, where there's so many people in such a small space, uh, where it really feels like you're in the midst of battle. You're concentrated, everybody in the midst of battle, and that's kind of where this came from. Um, and it definitely the Falmar Bridge, and I think the Lion Spire Bridge was the first one of these that we did.
I think this one too has the unique challenge of being horses. So like the horse spawns on this bridge kind of like have both sides charging towards each other. So you really have to have a long lead up to make that feel as good as it
Railroading the
Exactly.
layers
does.
in between is
And they
awesome.
had so much more chaoticness to it, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain level of chaos that you want. It can't be too much, or else it's just not fun. But you always want to try to push that because when there's chaos, it kind of helps you get in the mood of the battle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with this bridge specifically, I remember experimenting, or you guys experimenting, and just discussions where we found a level of chaos where, like, just the bridge part's good, but can't have them go under because A, you have the collision, and then B, it's just like people getting stuck and stuff. So it's yeah, we found the balance there.
Just another shot of the bridge here. A nice little site here. As you can see, these are some of the horse spawns as well. Once we get inside here, I really like this sight line. So again, we have these long leading lines, so people can spawn on horses and kind of do these fun drive-bys, which are, obviously unique to these maps. In addition to these objectives that are kind of in the open where you have to topple the towers. A lot of really nice art in here as well. I really like the blue on the buildings, and I like that it feels very lush as well with all the plants, and it's definitely different than anything that we've done before, chivalry-wise. Um,
It really shows the wealth that the Tenosians
yes,
have.
for sure. Yeah, especially when you compare it to something like, Coxwell, which is like a peasant village. Art-wise, there's definitely a difference between like the thatch roofing and the materials that make up all the buildings. And here you can really see that it looks more expensive, looks more lush and royal, and the way that the fabric drapes on the awnings, all the little details really add up. Go through some of these. This objective right before you're entering the library, I really like this area, especially like the reflections in the water pools. If anyone hasn't played this map, uh, you have to destroy those little. I can't think of the word for them. Pat, help me out. Do you know the word? the
Astrolabs, I think we're calling them.
astrolabs. So you
In
have to
science
destroy them.
school.
Yeah. Uh, so this area is particularly very royal or you know nice looking with all these plants that have been purposely planted, wide open court area, really nice. Um, Last but not least, we can't forget the actual uh, last objective here, where the map gets its name, library.
Iconic.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the iteration of just a lot of the library visuals come in. I think it was like between one build and another, and it was just instant difference. It all came together. It was amazing.
I really like this library because of the sense of the chaos in here. Once everything starts burning, there's smoke and fire, and as the stage goes on, the amount of chaos gets more and more chaos happening as more things start burning until everything's burned.
Yeah,
Totally.
and it's a cool objective because we've burnt stuff before in Chivalry, but this is like I think the most things you have to burn, and there's also the unique gameplay mechanic where defenders can actually extinguish the fire with water jugs. So you can get a bit of a tug of war as you kind of progress as the library is filling with smoke. So it's a super epic final battle.
I think some of the players didn't actually know about the water jug, so I'm excited to see once the game releases on Sunday how long it takes people to realize they can pick up those water jugs to help put out the fires.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we don't directly communicate. We want people to find it by themselves, and we imagine that it's going to very quickly become just another part of the objective. Especially wanting to give defenders more purpose to their actions and things, I think was a great feature.
Yeah, I think one of the aspects about chivalry is, sometimes defending can be difficult or challenging and, not as fun as attacking. So we want to give defenders more options to feel like what they're doing matters in that tug of war. I want to say Reapeth says the greenery and ceiling art look great. And you can actually see uh, all of the kind of like mosaic tiles and all that fancy stuff up there that really makes this library look something special. Which I think is nice that we're kind of taking a moment to look at it in screenshot form, because the form that players will see it will mostly be on fire and covered in smoke. So it's nice to give our environment art team a little time to shine, so everyone can see how much effort and uh, how much beauty there is here.
Yeah, I saw a question earlier that I would be fun to highlight is, are there Easter eggs? And of course there are. Check it out in both maps. And even just looking at this picture, I think there's like stuff you can hit and things you can look at and stuff. So keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, definitely Easter eggs. I love Easter eggs, so that's me. More Easter eggs, the better for me. More than happy.
It always makes my day when I see a Reddit post and someone's like, "Hey, I found this," and everyone's like, "No way, you're lying!" And then they go try it out for themselves, and it's actually in the game.
John, I think your objective, I think when you worked on Galencourt, was making some really sick Easter egg that would take a while to find.
Yeah, I think somebody's found most of it, but there's like a secret part that they haven't figured out yet. But I'll keep quiet on that.
I want to give Pat a chance to talk about. I know you worked on this map specifically. Maybe what is your favorite part of the map, or what part did you like working on the most?
So I mean, I liked working on all of it, and I worked on every stage a little bit. This library, I worked on fairly extensively, and it was probably my favorite part, just because it's so different from the rest of the level, and so different from anything else that we have in Chivalry, and so that was quite cool. But I think that the city was probably the biggest challenge, in that we were creating a new kind of architectural style for the whole level, and then this is like only one part of it. But then within the city, there are like kind of neighborhoods or areas that are all quite um, distinct, and they're not all like cookie cutter. Like you can go off to the market in a corner and find like a shoemaker stall, and you can actually pick up one of the shoes, use it as a weapon. You can only do that in that one particular area, but the attention that the artist put into that area is definitely appreciated if you know seek it out and find it. And there's all these kind of uh, neighborhoods in the city that have this little bit of character to them. So I think, yeah, definitely the city and this library here were the most fun to work on in that respect.
Thank you for outlining where the shoes are, because people have been asking about it, and I didn't even know what their answer was. So I'm going to be looking for them now too.
House of Play says, "You did so good on the library. It's the most beautiful thing in the game." Oh, we appreciate those kind comments. I
There's so
am
much
gonna
pattern in
be.
mosaic work.
Sorry, what was that, man?
I'm just saying there was so much pattern in mosaic work that really ties everything together in there.
I know, like looking at all of the roofing ones in particular in the library are so pretty. It almost looks like a real place. Like I want to go here. I'm kind of sad that I can't.
When it's not on fire.
Yeah, when it's not on
Exactly.
fire. Before the Masons get there. I have to leave before the Masons get there too.
Do some studies.
Oh. Vulcan's Flame says Masons don't appreciate knowledge.
Definitely not. Smash, smash, smash. That's what they're about, the Masons.
Oh. I'm going to wrap us up right about here. I'll give you in chat a few seconds to write any last minute questions while I tell you or remind you that June 12th, which is this Sunday, Chivalry 2 will be launching on Steam, and the Tenosian Invasion update will be available on all our supported platforms. That includes Epic Games, it'll include Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, the whole 9 yards. You'll be able to play and explore these maps as you've seen them today for yourself. Have tons of fun with horses. This is, as I mentioned, it is the 1 year anniversary of Chivalry 2 being out. And we're super stoked to say that, we've doubled the size of the game since it originally launched back on June 8th, 2021. And we hope that you guys really enjoy this update and enjoy all of our Steam friends get to come hang out with us as well. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for our awesome environment artist and level designer for being here today. Pat and John, you guys
Yes.
rock.
Thank you so much, John and
Thank you for
Pat.
having us. I would definitely like to come back. This was very fun.
Awesome. I think the chat really appreciated all of your guys' insight. I'm seeing a lot of thank you, devs. Thank you, TB. Thank you, Torn Banner. All these nice comments. A lot of thanks. Thank you to everybody in the chat that hung out with us. As always, we'll see you on Discord, Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. And we'll see you here on this Twitch channel on Sunday.
And in game on Sunday.
Sunday. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.